Last time we looked at a little mod for Half-Life 2 called Estranged Act 1, a mod I played over 6 years ago, and revisiting it I decided that it was still worth a look. Being only an hour and a half long, it's a fun little title to play, and within those 6 years, the developer has released the second act into Steam under early access, and with the game being close to final release, I finally decided to give it a go. And here's how that went. Estranged follows the story of a lone fisherman whose ship crashes on an unknown island, where an outbreak of the undead has spread across the island and a facility known as Ark has blocked all forms of contact to the outside world, with a message playing on loop. The goal from here is to make your way to the station when the signal is coming from, shut it off, and then call for help. As you can expect, Estranged Act 2 is the next part of the story, starting off with a flashback to the events that occur prior to the beginning of Act 1. You wake up in a small house on the coast of Scotland, there's a couple of things you can interact with, but all that really happens is that you head outside, go to your boat and sail off until you receive the SOS message that proceeds to the beginning of Act 1. After that, the game cuts back to the present where the game picks up straight from the ending of Act 1. The fisherman has fallen down a cavern and must make his way towards the location of the signal being transmitted by Ark. Similar to the first act, the story is split into 3 chapters and is roughly an hour to an hour and a half long. And unlike the original, the first half of this game feels very pointless and incredibly boring. You go through various areas of a facility with nothing really going on, there's no one around, nothing interesting to interact with, you just climb through some vents, find the odd audio log or radio transmission from the survivor of Act 1, and make your way outside. I really wish I could make that sound more appealing, but honestly the game doesn't give me anything interesting until the second half of the game. At best, the only interesting thing to note is that from the first half of the game, there's a new enemy type which you'll encounter, which is a turret, which you destroy by removing the batteries. Yeah, it's really thrilling. Oh, and you survive being blasted by a shotgun from close range. I really wish there was something more going on with the first half of the game, but there isn't. You gave me a melee weapon at the start of the game, let me use it on something. You only really start to encounter infected once you get your first firearm, but I guess with the lack of literally anything to do, it does give you the chance to take in the environment, and one thing Act 2 does have over the original is that visually, this game looks great. Areas like the beginning of the game, the forest, facility, and radio station, they all have really nice and pleasing atmospheres to walk through, and this is due to one of the more bigger changes to the sequel. As you know, the original mod ran on Source, however with Act 2 the developers decided to make the switch and change from Source to Unreal 4. It's an interesting decision to make, and it does work in its favour because the game looks so much better thanks to the lighting and shaders. But besides the visuals, the rest of the game is a bit of a downgrade. The weapons in Act 2 are a prime example of this downgrade, keeping in mind that the original weapons in Act 1 were a reuse of assets. These in comparison really don't back the decision to swap engines. You have 2 melee weapons which are a pickaxe and a hammer, and also 3 firearms being a shotgun, a pistol and an assault rifle, but all of them just feel incredibly weak, and the animations that go with them really emphasise this. Again, I do fully understand that in Act 1 they reused a lot of Half-Life assets, and in Act 2 this is mainly developed by one person, and so a lot of these are probably original assets. But when you go from how good the visuals are, it really sends off the impression that the decision to add weapons in Act 2 was merely an afterthought. Especially when you notice the disclaimer on the store page claiming, and I quote, "While Estranged is tagged as a horror game by the Steam community, it is intended to be an action-adventure game. Most horror game fans will not find this scary." I find this baffling since the weapons only really become useful once you get to the point where you get captured. Everything prior to this screams the idea that it's meant to be a walking simulator with horror aspects. You even get chased by a zombie at one point which is meant to be kinda creepy, but once you escape the cell and get involved with a mini outbreak in the abandoned Ark facility, the game does go from a slow-paced quiet exploration to an unsatisfying bloodbath riddled with infected and militia. Which would be fine, I enjoy good gunfighting games, but the enemy AI is really poor and none of these weapons feel like they pack any punch. And instead of being a relief that the game has finally given you a threat to go against, it just feels more like a chore. Go into this room, clear out the room, just so you can progress further into the level. What makes things weirder is that when you progress further into the final areas of the game, the more you realise the direction of the world in this game makes little to no sense, especially when you consider areas you've explored like in Act 1. The island has a heavy lack of consistency, and it feels more like I'm playing through Dark Souls 2 with how much some of these locations don't make any sense. And the ending. Oh god, the ending! When a game is a side project, I can completely understand that ideas and directions change all the time. I've done this with videos I've cancelled in the past myself, but I'm not sure what the developer was thinking towards the end of the game because the ending is so bizarre. I'm not going to spoil anything directly, but all I will say is the part where you drown and wake up on the log before passing out again, that would have been the most ideal ending for the game. Everything past that frankly is just a waste of time and makes little to no sense. I'm fully aware this is apparently a temporary ending, but I can't imagine anything past the current ending is going to make sense out of any of that. It's that jarring. Estranged Act 2 is a weird one. It's not an awful title, but it definitely falls under a disappointing sequel, which is rather unfortunate considering how much I enjoyed playing through Act 1. It's a prime example of when a project's direction changes constantly throughout development, but I personally think that the change to Unreal 4 was one of the biggest key factors, considering a chunk of assets like animations, weapons, enemy AI in Act 1 were just reused from Half-Life 2. It would have been more beneficial in the gunplay aspect to consider holding onto the old animation rig because the new ones definitely fall flat. Now, even though this is a disappointing sequel, I'd still say if you've played the first act, definitely try out the second act too. I know it's more negative than positive here, but there are aspects of this which are fun, but overall the first act still remains superior in my eyes. So when you go in with this one, don't set your expectations too high, and I hope to god there isn't an act 3. Also, the idea of using Half-Life boxes in this game makes no sense. Instead of them breaking, you just pick up the lid and then it all collapses on top of each other. And the worst bit is, you can't even pick up ammo by walking on it, you actually have to interact with it. So it becomes, instead of picking up something, you're then playing a visual puzzle trying to find where the fucking battery or ammo pack is. Basically what I'm saying is, it's shit and I hate it.